Hello everyone, welcome to the 4LadsHadADream Women's Podcast. This is our second episode and I'm delighted tonight that our guest will be Lisa Swanson, who everybody knows is a legend of the Rangers women's setup. She was with Rangers for 11 years, so we are delighted that she's joined us tonight. And before we get there, and before we introduce our co-hosts Chris and Mhairi and also speak to Lisa, I want to talk a wee bit about what today is. Today in the world is World Suicide Prevention Day. And today, this podcast we dedicate to Lisa's brother, Billy. Billy sadly took his own life, something that we'll discuss with Lisa. And when this podcast gets aired on Saturday, hopefully you're all listening, this will be the anniversary of Billy's death. Anybody that has been involved in a situation that involves suicide knows how devastating it is and how brave you have to be to take that decision, and how much turmoil it must be, something that I'll never be able to understand. One of my own best friends when I was 17 and he was only 18, Lee McFall from back home in Fort William, sadly took his own life. So it's something that has touched my own personal self and a lot of people around me. I don't have the words to say to anybody, but all I would say is please be kind and be gentle to people. And if anybody feels like they need to, please talk. I think that's most important. There's a lot of charities out there you can contact, like for example, the Chris Boyd charity. There's CAM, which you can find at www.thecamzone.net. There's Heads Together, which is www.headstogether.org.uk. There's a lot of people you can speak to, and you can also contact 4LadsHadADream, and you can speak to us as well, and we will always try and help you. So with that said, this is a special podcast in memory of Billy, and we're here to celebrate Lisa Swanson, who is, as we said, an icon of the Rangers women's side, and I'm really excited. Lisa's also a really good pal of mine, so we're looking forward to chatting to her. So I'd like to introduce a co-host, a good friend of mine. He is chief sports writer over at the Herald and Glasgow Times Group, Mr. Chris Jack. Chris, how are you, buddy?
Very well, thanks, Stevie. Thanks for having us on. Nice to have Mhairi back for our second women's podcast. And having done a bit of research on Lisa and also knowing a wee bit about her career, really looking forward to hearing her really inspirational and really great stories. I'm sure that's a really interesting listen for everybody that's going to tune in.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a wee bit waiting for our second episode of the Women's Podcast, obviously, because COVID and lockdown has meant that we haven't been able to speak to anyone. Obviously, we had the brilliant Lana Cleland on. Also joining us is our women's co-host. She is the FIFA fan movement representative for Scotland. You can find her online at MMCK90, #WeLiveFootball. Mhairi McKenzie. Mhairi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. How is things over at FIFA?
Fantastic. It's we're still living, or enjoying getting back some football on TV, and across the world, everyone's in the same situation. They're not getting to see any live games, so they are feeling their pain. So it's a really good time for us all to connect and to catch up with each other and get to share experiences and try and talk through our own country, and it's fantastic. So it's a really good network of people, and we're all now just desperate to get back to watching our live games again.
Absolutely, I think we all feel that. There's definitely an excitement for the Rangers women's team this year, and the Scottish women's game in general. But tell us a wee bit about your own involvement with FIFA and a wee bit about what you do there.
Yeah, so we are a group from, as I said, all over the world. They try to get a member from each FIFA member country. And we meet regularly just now at the moment via Zoom, just to keep in touch and keep everyone on the same page. We'll discuss everything. We'll talk women's football, men's football, youth football. We'll do futsal. We'll talk around just different media campaigns. We'll discuss racism, sexism, all different issues that pop up in world football. So it's a really broad scope, and we find that there's loads of people from lots of different backgrounds. We've got some professional players in there. We've got fans that are particularly talented with graphics and design and things, and we've also got just your standard fan just like me that just loves going along and watch football. So we get to collaborate and come up with some new ideas. We contribute to some things, like at the moment we're helping out with the FIFA World Cup tour, or the trophy tour. So really exciting times. We get to get a little insight to how FIFA operate, and to chip in with our opinions on things. So it's a a really, really cool opportunity for me to be involved in, and it's certainly grown very, very quickly. So it's an exciting time in football, and especially women's football. There's a huge, huge focus on it at the moment.
Yeah, that all sounds fantastic, and obviously to be involved with, the world governing body is hugely exciting as well. So a wee shout out to FIFA and the work they're currently doing on the women's game. So that moves us on nicely. Lady of the Hour, she is our special guest. She is a very good friend of ours. 11 years at Rangers Football Club. Miss Lisa Swanson, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yes, very good. Welcome to 4LadsHadADream pod. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. So, obviously, this is a very emotive time for you, a very emotional time. Your brother Billy was such a huge part of your life. This podcast is dedicated to him.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go on to talk about your career and Rangers and things, what can you tell us about your life with Billy and what happened to him, and your message would be to anyone out there that's listening?
Yeah. So as kids, we were really close. There was less than a year between us, so for 11 days or that, we're the same age. So when we were younger, we used to kid on we were twins. We look alike and kind of act the same as well. So we were really close, but we were separated as kids, and then we were kind of reunited again like 14 years later. But within that time, we still kept in contact. He actually got to train with me up at Rangers. My manager at the time, Angie Hind, she allowed him to train. He was a goalkeeper, and that same time that he was home, he got to come and see me play against Celtic, which was good. But he was suffering, and he's a bit like me. He never asked for help, and just kind of keeps things to himself, and nobody really knew until after. But he was suffering for depression and things like that, and sadly he took his own life. And so it was obviously a difficult time. But what I'd say to people, what I've kind of learned from that is you should never really be ashamed to speak out and ask for help. And that's something that I didn't even do as well when I was struggling. It took me quite a lot from in my own personal things. It took quite a lot for me to actually get help for things that I was going through, and I've learned a lot through all of that. So one of the things I would urge is always speak out, and there is always someone there to listen to you and try and get you the help that you need.
Lisa, if I can just say something, I think it's incredibly brave for you to come on and discuss that. And it's not something we want to brush over, and we do want to just repeat that we said to everybody. We should just, again, reiterate that. Please speak out. If anyone is ever feeling that they need help, please do that. And you can contact any of us, and we will try and help you. But Lisa, as I said, without moving on, and we'll talk about Billy as we go through this, let's journey back and talk about Lisa Swanson as a young girl. Who are your heroes growing up, and who did you support as a young girl?
So my hero was my nana when I was growing up. She's a massive Rangers fan as well, and she basically brought me up as one of her own, and she was the most important person in my life. And I think I'm Rangers daft, and I definitely get that from my nana. But in football, I'd say growing up, my hero was Julie Fleeting. Growing up, obviously the usual Rangers ones like Alan McCoy and things like that. But my first kind of hero in football was Julie Fleeting. She was a striker as well, and I always kind of looked up to her. She's from the same area from me as well, and she's an unbelievable player and someone that I kind of always looked up to, and I wanted to be like her when I grew up. I actually met her when I was a young kid. My dad, he's really close with Ray Montgomery, who was at Kilmarnock. He's a close family friend, and he organised it, so I actually got to meet her when I was a kid. And I was proper starstruck. I don't even think I said 2 words to her. And then she ended up working in the 2 schools in that area. So I went to Gersnet Academy, and I think that's the only school that she never worked in. And then in football, she ended up playing for Celtic and Glasgow City. So Rangers and Glasgow was the only team that she kind of never came to. So I missed out on that, but I did get to play against her a few times, which was good. It was unbelievable for me, and a lot of my teammates used to wind me up about it because they were good friends with her. So they didn't look at Julie Fleeting the same way as I did, as like a young kid growing up, and like she was literally my hero, and they all used to like wind me up about it and things like that. So I definitely say they two, my nana in my life, and in football was Julie Fleeting.
Of course, Julie just played at Soccer Aid, didn't she, at the weekend?
Right,
yeah. So that's how people might know her as being relevant. But she was an unbelievable goal scorer in her career as well. So that brings us nicely on. So why did you start playing football? When did you first start getting a ball at your feet? And why did you then take it on like you did?
I've literally had a ball at my feet since I could walk. There's a picture of me, my wee brother and my two cousins, and I'm in primary 1. I'm standing in my school skirt in my back door, and I've got a flyaway under my arm. I was playing football, and I was only about 5. It's all I've ever known. I've literally, I played in the street up until I was about 12. I wasn't in like any football teams at all until I was about 12. But it's just something that I've always loved. It's an escape as well if you're going through things at home or whatever. I had a best pal called Mark, and I used to chat to his door 8 o'clock every morning, and that would be us till like about dinner time, and then you're back out till like 10 o'clock at night. That was our life growing up, just going to the park with your pals and playing against whoever you could find. And I literally just had a ball at my feet all the time, and I don't know what it was. I was never forced to play or anything. It was just something that I love doing and something that I've always did. So
if my research is correct and my knowledge of you is, Lisa, and I hope it is, because yesterday you gave me into trouble because I said you were 2 years at Rangers, and I got big texts saying I'm 11. So I hope this is right. You joined Rangers under 17s?
Under 17s, yeah.
So let's bridge the gap in between then and before Mhairi comes in to talk to you about Rangers and things like that. Tell us about how you started and how you managed to get to Rangers at that stage.
So I joined my first team when I was 12. It was a boys' team called Saltcoats United, and we were honestly the worst team in the league. Out the whole season, we only won like 1 game, but I loved it. And I also played for the school team at the same time, and again there was only about 3 of us that really played football. So when it came to 7-a-side, we were brilliant, but 11-a-side, we were terrible. So basically, starting out, I was involved in teams that were just getting beat every single weekend. And then my nana bought me, see, at Rangers Soccer School, she got me a week's training up there for my birthday, and we trained at Ibrox Complex, and obviously you're training across to the stadium every single day, and it was amazing. I loved it. And that's kind of when, even at that age, I wanted to play with Rangers, but it was impossible then because they never had like a female set up at the club at that time. But I just had it in my head, I wanted to play with Rangers. And then, as I mentioned before, like my dad, he's really close with Mhairi Montgomery, and I think he put a word in for me at Kilmarnock. So I joined Kilmarnock at under 13s. I played until under 17s, and then I was at a Scotland trial, and in that trial, it's probably one of the best games I've ever played. Like my dad even said that I played well, so that's when I know like I've had a good game. And then that day you find out whether you're successful or not. So I wasn't called back for like a second trial or anything. So I went home, went back down the road all the way to Perth and into my nana's house and told her like I'd never get picked. And then that same night I got a phone call from an unknown number, and I answered it, and it was a guy called John McMonagle, who was he was at the start of the process of the Rangers girls team coming together, and he phoned me to ask me if I could travel up to Anniesland the next day and go for basically like a 6 weeks trial with Rangers under 17s. So at that point, I'd never even heard of Anniesland. So I was straight on Google Maps, like, how am I going to get there? And then figured all of that out. I went up to Anniesland the next day, and then it was literally like a 6 week. It was like a 6 week range of soccer skills basically, and that was classed as your trial. And then that's just how I get picked up for Rangers. So I think when I played for Kilmarnock, we played against the team that then took over Rangers. So I think they kind of seen me a bit there as well. And I think I did well against that team. And then I think his daughter was at that Scotland trial as well. So that's how I get picked up.
So Lisa, obviously when you went to Rangers, you were at under 17s level. How did that compare to, your club, obviously Kilmarnock, who were, quite a well-established club as well? What was the biggest changes to move over to Rangers, who were obviously a new setup altogether? And what was your first experiences like at that level?
When I found out about it, it was a yes straight away. I'm obviously a Rangers supporter, so to get the chance to go and even just train, even if I didn't get in, like, I was still going to take that chance. But the setup at the time, it was amazing. It was through the summer, so you were training Monday to Friday, and it was like all day. So it was like 9 o'clock to 3, and just the standard and everything. It was good even at that age, but we were still trying to recruit a lot of players at that time. But I'd say there wasn't like a massive difference between Kilmarnock and Rangers. It was easy to transition over from like Kilmarnock to Rangers, especially at that age.
How did you feel from the step up, obviously from under 17s up to the women's squad? As a young player playing against, obviously women's football has a right variety of ages in there. So how did you feel as a young girl going into that next step up?
The most thing I was nervous about was training at the training ground, because when at Rangers under 17s we trained at Ibrox Complex. So to actually go up to the Rangers training ground, because I'd only ever seen that on Blue Heaven. I used to watch Blue Heaven as a kid, and that's the only time I'd ever seen was Murray Park at the time, and that's the only time I'd ever seen it. So like driving through the gates was the most nervous I've ever been. And then to start off with, it was 2 weeks before my 16th birthday. So I went into the team. I was obviously quite young, and the first player I seen was Jane Somerville, and she's a player that she was my captain at the time, and she was a player that I'd seen in playing in Scotland squads and things like that. So straight away I knew like this is going to be difficult, and I wasn't in the team to start with. And then it was actually Jane who gave me advice how to get in the team, and she just kind of told me, like, when you're getting in for tackles, make sure like you're getting in, winning the ball, going in hard. This is women's football, it's completely different. Like, if you want to play here, you need to make an impact right from the beginning. So that's what I try to do. I used to speak to the older players quite a lot and try and get advice for them. Obviously, for a young kid getting into a Rangers first team, it was obviously, I was nervous to begin with, but at the same time, I was loving it. Like, I didn't care. At the end up, I didn't care like who I was up against in training and things like that. I just wanted to go out and do well and get myself in the Rangers first team. What
would you say your major achievements from your time at Rangers? And of course, that should also spread from your first start at the under 17s right through to the ladies squad. What was your favourite points from your career? Mm-hmm.
So for the first year of the women's team, we had to start in the first division because we were a new team. That was in 2008, and we had to play in the first division. We won that. We went unbeaten in the league, and then Rangers women took off a wee bit. We got more like publicity around us and things like that. But in terms of achievements, like my whole time there, we didn't win anything really. I think that comes down to maybe inconsistency. In my 11 years, I had 8 different managers, so you're effectively playing in 8 different teams. So when managers come in, they bring players. When managers leave, players go with them. So in terms of achievements, it's probably how long I've been there. I'm currently the longest serving female player at the club, and for me, that's amazing for me, I think, because as a young kid, all I ever wanted to do was play with Rangers, and I promised my nana that I would be the first player to get 10 years, and I managed that. So I'd say out of everything, that's probably my biggest achievement.
Listen, but it certainly is a female. You know, we're good friends, and it's something that I, would love to have done. I know we did train together at the training ground in the very early days of Rangers Women. Thankfully, I wasn't on the opposition side from Lisa, because she's not kidding when she says going hard for challenges, and that's all I'll say on that one.
Kill them fast.
Yeah, well, exactly. So following up, obviously, to talking about Jane Somerville, who was obviously, as you mentioned, a major impact on you personally, and she was obviously a very, very talented player. Can you tell me about some of the other players that you've played with at the club that have had a big impact on you personally, both off and on the park, and who's some of your favourite players that you've played alongside?
I played alongside Rhonda Jones and Megan Snedden. Like, they've got over 100 caps for Scotland, and they're big Rangers fans as well, which was good for me. Jane Somerville was one as well, who I looked up to Jane quite a lot. She probably doesn't know that, but she was one of the players that I'd always kind of looked to. Suzanne Mulvey as well. She was a striker in the team at the time, and I used to just try and learn off her as much as I could. I used to watch her all the time in training, and then in games, if I was a sub, she would be the one player that I was watching, because she was obviously my competition and she was playing ahead of me. There's players like Leslie Condé as well, who I'm good friends with. Honestly, I've played with like so many good players, and I've had so many good managers, and I've got to play against good players, like, as I said before, like Julie Fleeting and things like that. So they're probably the players I would highlight the most out of my time at Rangers.
So obviously this last couple of seasons, you have left Rangers. Can you just tell us a little bit more about, the end of your time at Rangers and how that came about?
So I came home from Finland. I was over there for a while, and I came back feeling like the best I've ever felt. It's the fittest I've ever been, and I was back scoring goals and things like that. And when I came back, I felt as if Celtic were doing better than us. They were kind of ahead of us in every way, and I felt like Rangers were falling behind a wee bit. At the same time, the Rangers women's team were doing a huddle, and like before games, the way Celtic do. And as a Rangers supporter, never mind a Rangers player, I didn't really agree with that. I didn't think that should have been going on at Rangers. Some people argue the point, but I just didn't feel comfortable with it, and it's not something I think Rangers should have been doing. So I spoke to the manager about it, and then literally since that conversation, no matter what I did in training or in games, I was on the bench. I get benched for it. I think, in my opinion, that's why I ended up on the bench week in, week out. During that time, it's quite a difficult time. I asked if I could speak to the club doctor, who then referred me to Hampden, and I was allocated a sports psychologist. So the reason for that is I just needed to keep my head in the right place. Previous to that, from 2016 to 2018, I was getting help basically for like my own mental health. I struggled quite a lot after my nana passed away, and then 14 months later my wee brother passed away. And the only way I knew how to deal with things was just throw myself into football, and that's exactly what I did. So Billy's funeral was, I think it was like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and then I came back up the road and I was playing for Rangers on the Sunday, and I was back scoring goals. I scored in that game, and I felt as if previous to all of this, I got myself in a good place again, and the only thing that was kind of dragging me down now was football. And I felt as if I was being punished because I had an opinion and I spoke about it. So during that time, like, the sports psychologist, she helped me a lot. So I spoke to the manager on like 2 separate occasions about how do I get myself back in this team. Like, I just want to play. And it's not as if the team were winning every week and it was difficult to get into a winning side. Rangers were getting beat maybe like 3 games in a row, then they'd go and beat a team like Stirling 1-0, and then they'd be getting beat 3-4 games in a row again, and I'm just sitting on the bench not able to do anything. It was times I didn't even go on, and it was getting to me. I was starting to get like quite annoyed by it. So the second time I spoke to the manager, she suggested that I go on loan to Kilmarnock. The reason for that was to get game time and to get back scoring goals and enjoying football again. So I was actually registered as homeless at this point. So I was living in Irvine, which is close to Kilmarnock. So I decided then, right, it makes sense just to make that move. If I'm only going to be on loan, like, it makes sense. So I went to Kilmarnock to get game time, and we ended up playing against Rangers in a friendly up at the training ground. So in that same game, I noticed that one of my Rangers teammates was wearing my squad number, and that annoyed me. I know it's only a squad number, but my squad number was important to me, and it's a number that I'd wore for like 10 and a half years at that point, and then it was just given away. And I later found out like that was done basically to wind me up, which I thought it was like no need for that kind of thing. It's already hard enough that I've been sent away like from the club, to then see that my squad number was taken off me. So like, don't get me wrong as well, like at that point I was still training with Rangers on a Wednesday night, and after that game I never went back to Rangers. I never trained with them again on Wednesday night. I just kind of focused on Kilmarnock. And also in that same game I scored against Rangers and I celebrated, which is something I said that I'd never do. But I was just that wound up and annoyed, and I just, at that point, I didn't care anymore. So there's probably things that I've done as well that the manager never agreed with. But looking back, I don't say like I regret anything, because at the time that's just how I was feeling. And although I was going up to training on a Wednesday night, I just felt as if I didn't belong there. And it was like a strange feeling, but I felt as if I just had to get myself like fully out of that environment, get myself away from like certain people and just focus purely on football. So I started to just focus on Kilmarnock and just basically play for a manager who supported me. And so I went to Kilmarnock on loan, and I played 8 games for them, and I ended up top goal scorer. I won Player of the Month out the whole of Scotland. I won Player of the Month for September, and I won Goal of the Season. So in my head, I'm thinking to myself, right, surely to God I've done enough here to make a good impression that, look, if you give me game time, this is what I can do. So I went back to Rangers, and we had the end of the season awards night. And on that same night, I had players coming up to me saying, "Oh, we heard you've decided to leave next season. Like, what did you say? Like, good luck and all the best." And I'm saying back to them, I've not made any decisions yet. I says, I don't even know if that is my decision. I said, I don't know where I stand right now, so I don't know why that rumour's kind of going about, and I don't know who started it. I went into Ibrox for my end of the season meeting, and I just knew straight away. Like, I sat down in the seat, and my manager and my coach were sitting across from me, and see that way, like, you've got a lump in your throat. Like, if you go to speak, I just felt as if I was just going to start crying. I felt as if I just knew what was coming. So I can't even remember like how the conversation started. I couldn't even tell you what I said to begin with. But the manager was saying to me, "Look, I know you've did well going to Kilmarnock, but Kilmarnock were a league below. They played in the SWPL too." She's like, "So really, like, you should have, what you achieved there, it's expected." And it wasn't after that I'm sitting thinking to myself, well, why send me there if I'm successful, I've got the game time and I've scored the goals, but somehow that's still not good enough, even though that was the club that I was sent to try and make an impact. So I was also told, the exact words that were said to me in my meeting were, I don't want to be responsible for you going on a downward spiral for not getting game time. So that to me told me that I'm not in the plans for the future. And I just felt that totally kind of disregarded everything that I've been through. I went through 2 years worth of help, and I was obviously seeing a sports psychologist early in the year, and I felt as if that comment just totally undermined everything. Because at this point I wasn't seeing anyone. Like I'd progressed so well. Like previously I was on like 4 different types of medication and things like that for my mental health, and I was in and out of doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, and I was finally in a place where I've overcame all of that. I progressed. I'm doing well right now. And that comment, it just, I don't know, it was just like a kick in the teeth for me. It's just, I felt as if it just totally undermined absolutely everything. So after that meeting, I was driving at this point. So after the meeting, I drove home back down the road, and I was genuinely heartbroken that I had to stop my car twice because I couldn't see for tears. That I literally just cried like the whole way home, and I just knew, like, after the way I was kind of treated, I was ignored and things like that as well. Like my whole time I was on loan, it was just, like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. There was nobody communicating with me from the club at all. It was as if I was just, I don't know, just forgotten about basically. So when it came to that meeting at the end, I kind of knew what was coming, and I drove home that night, and that was me done with football. I was quitting football altogether, and I didn't want anything to do with it. So that's how it ended for me at Rangers at the end. Like in the best of terms for me. It's not the ending I would have picked anyway, but suppose that's football and how brutal football can be at times. But it's just something that I felt as if I deserved a wee bit better, considering that I dedicated my whole life to playing with Rangers. Every job that I had growing up was based on, like, right, I can only take this job because it means I'm free at nights to go to training, or I'm free on a Sunday so I'm available for games. So I literally dictated my whole life around playing for Rangers, and then for it to end the way it did was like quite a hard one to take.
Lisa, 11 years at Rangers, you've obviously, you've scored an amazing amount of goals, you've given up so much of your life. As you said, you've dictated your whole life around the football club. Those final few years and the way you've been treated, and I've read about this before, it isn't something that I would want to associate with the football club. And it seems to me there was a real lack of respect, and basically just, respect is a word for everything that you had achieved. And even if, the clubs do separate and people, they go separate ways, we understand that, but it sounds to me like they didn't handle it very well. Who's responsible for that, Lisa? And where are you now in terms of with Rangers? Have you had closure on that part of your life?
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I think for me it was purely the manager at the time, because I've spoke to people at the club who are higher up after it, and they knew nothing about kind of what was going on. So for me, it was definitely, I just think the manager had an issue with me, and it wasn't that I wasn't good enough to be a Rangers player anymore. It was purely down to the fact that I had an opinion. I voiced my opinion and I defended it basically, and I didn't do that in a disrespectful way at all. I done that with the best interest of Rangers. Because at that time, like when the Rangers team were doing a huddle, we were getting slated on like social media and things like that, and people were calling us a disgrace, and this is why I'll never support the women's team. And I was trying to like get more people to come and support us, because that will then raise our profile. And Celtic, they were miles ahead of us, and Dave King even said it in one of his statements that the Rangers women's team were neglected, and that's kind of, looking back, that's how it felt. But I don't know, for me it was a manager, and that's all I can say on that. But what happened the season after, when the 19 players released, I wasn't there, so I don't know the ins and outs of that. But I do think things could have been and should have been handled a lot better than the way they were.
Right, so before Chris obviously comes in and we go on in your career, let's try and end it in a wee bit of a better note with regards to Rangers, because obviously a huge part of what's happened recently is how you left. But going back to your career at Rangers, let's talk about a wee bit about your goals, your favourite goals for Rangers, your goals against Celtic. I really hope Kimberly's there in the background listening to this as well. So let's get all your best, goals against Celtic and stuff, and let's try and kind of be positive, kind of going forward.
Probably my best goal was probably against Glasgow City. They were going to win the league that day, and everyone kind of wrote us off before it. It was like their big title party that day. I think I scored early on. The ball came over, I managed to nick in front of the defender, and I chipped the keeper, I think just outside the box, and then I later went on to score a penalty in that game as well. But in the end up, we played really well. We did give them a good game, but in the end up, they brought on their big players, and they ended up winning. But in terms of goals, I'd say that's probably one of my better goals. One of my best games is it was a League Cup semi-final against Celtic. Scott Allison was our manager at the time, and we played inside at Torrey Glen, and we had our manager get sent off, we had a player sent off, and we had a player who was being sick at half time. We later found out that she was actually pregnant. So everything in that game was just going against us. It went to extra time and then went to penalties, so I don't even think we had time to pick 5 players, because obviously Scott was sent off. So everything was just kind of rushed. So every time somebody hit a penalty, I looked over to Scott, like, can I go next? I was dying to hit one. I didn't care, it was like a semi-final. I didn't care about the importance of it. I was just thinking to myself, I'm not going to get a better chance than right now to score against Celtic than hit a penalty. So it was the third one, the fourth one, and then I'm looking over and I'm like, surely to God he's going to let me hit one. So he was saving me to the end. So in that game, the Celtic goalkeeper was my Kilmarnock goalkeeper when I was there. And when we played for Kilmarnock, we used to just turn up in our own stuff. So I used to wear my Rangers top going to go to training with Kilmarnock, and she used to wear her Celtic top. So it was just like being back in training again as kids. So thankfully I scored that penalty, and that put us into the Scottish Cup final. And I said to Scott, I was like, why did you leave me at the end? I said, I didn't think I was going to get to hit one. He's like, I knew you wouldn't let me down. He's like, I knew you wouldn't waste a chance going against Celtic. So he's like, I knew if I left you to the end and it came down to you, I knew that you'd score it. So I'd say that's probably one of my highlights, that game there, especially because it was against Celtic as well.
Lisa, when Stevie said the other day there, we're also getting you on the podcast, I went did a bit of reading on you and also looked up your football story and your life story. I found the piece that you did for the Sport for Champions website, and I would encourage MD to go and Google it, go and find it, and read your story in your own words. And one of the things that really comes through it is just how important football has been throughout your entire life, and indeed halfway through it you say football saved my life. Can you just expand on that a wee bit, and just what the game has done for you? Because everybody loves the game and they loves their team, but for you, it has the game itself, for all the highs and the lows, it has had such a profound effect on you.
As I said before, no matter what's happened in my life, I've just threw myself into football head first, and I barely missed a training session in my life, especially as at Rangers. I just dedicated absolutely everything to making sure I was at every training session and available for every game. And football did literally dictate my life, but that was a decision that I made. Every job I've had, absolutely everything was focused around my football. And I've always loved football since I was a young kid. And I don't know what it is, but it's something that's always kind of what I've used to help me through things in life, and it's my escape kind of thing from everything that's going on. When you're at football, you don't think about all your problems, or you don't think about anything that you're going through. You're just purely focused on what's happening in that moment. And I think football has at one point saved my life, because as I said before, like when I was at my wee brother's funeral during the week, I was straight back up the road and straight back on the pitch playing for Rangers again. And it's when it was the end of the season, it was when I struggled the most, because I didn't have football to turn to. And it's always just kind of been something that I've used to help me through things.
How difficult has it been for you in the last couple of months, obviously, with everything that's been going on in the world and the game being obviously shut down for a long time? How have you got through lockdown, and what's your plans for kind of getting back into it?
I've kind of used it as when you play football, when you work full time, your life's hectic. You're on the go 24/7, and you don't really have time to do anything. So during lockdown, I've made a few big decisions in my life, and it's gave me all this time really that I've never had before. So I've used it in a positive way. During lockdown, I was injured as well, so that it kind of worked out well for me. So it meant I wasn't missing football. I think it's easier to miss it when everyone's back playing, but nobody was playing at all, so it didn't really affect me too much in that sense. So I've made a big career decision, and I've decided that I'm not going to be at Hearts anymore. I've decided just to I'm going to focus on my career now. I've never really had a career. I've just turned 29 last month, and I've just kind of jumped from job to job, and so that I've got money there to get me to football, and so I'm available for games and things like that. But I think now I'm at that age where I really need to start focusing on my future and put my career first rather than football all the time. Football doesn't, I don't get paid to play football. I never have, apart from when I was in Finland. But I just got to a point where football is becoming less important to me now than what it was throughout those years. And that's kind of one of the big decisions I've made during lockdown, just to focus on a career rather than putting football first.
How difficult was that decision to make? Because as we've just said, football is all you've known. It's played such a huge part in your life, both on and off the park. Was that something you deliberated quite a lot about? Did you talk it through with MD in the game or out the game, just to make sure that was the right path for you to go down?
Yeah, I did. As I said, when after my meeting up at Rangers, and I knew I wasn't going to be a Rangers player anymore, I was ready to quit football altogether. And the thing, it kind of changed it for me. I was sitting in a pub one night with my friend Robert, and he's good friends with Charlie Miller. So I was sitting with Robert, Charlie Miller, Bob Malcolm, and Andy McLaren, and Charlie's brother and cousin. And I was sitting talking to them about it, and they were just giving me advice and kind of telling me their stories and how it felt for them leaving Rangers. Because in my head, it was Rangers or nothing. I just had tunnel vision. It was just Rangers and that's it. Although I did well when I was on loan at Kilmarnock, I just wanted to be a Rangers player. And I technically still was a Rangers player because I was only on loan. So to make that transition to actually leave the club and go and play for another club, I was struggling with that concept. And then I spoke to them, and I don't know, something just clicked for me. I think it was Charlie said to me, if you're telling me that you're good enough, go and show it. He's like, you don't need to prove your point to anyone. he's like, don't give up something you love based on the opinion of one other person. And that opinion is of someone who clearly doesn't like you or isn't bothered about what you do. So why throw everything away based on that opinion? And then after that, I was sitting thinking about it for days and days, and then I just decided, you know what, they're right. Why do I have to throw all this away just because one person doesn't like me or does they want me a part of their team? So that's what kind of kept me like involved in football again. And then I went on to sign for Kilmarnock, and I played a full season there, and like they made me club captain and everything, and they really made me feel like a part of something, and I felt as if I was making an impact again. I felt as if I'm actually at a club where I'm wanted, and from the way I felt at the end of the season to the way I felt at the beginning of the season with Kilmarnock, it was like night and day, and I was so glad that I chose to keep playing.
So what does the future hold for you then? I hope over the last hour or so people have really enjoyed hearing your in-depth and inspirational story. What's the next chapter for Lisa Swanson?
So I've left Hearts, but I'm technically still signed. They haven't released me yet, but they have gave me permission to train with Motherwell. So that's where I've been the past few weeks. I've been training with Motherwell, which is ideal because I've just moved to Courtbridge recently. So it's literally like 10 minutes from my house. And I've spoke to them about, obviously, I've made a big career change. So they know like that's going to come first, but I'll do everything I can to be at training. Like my Kilmarnock manager, he's now at Motherwell, he's the assistant coach. So he knows that I'll be as committed as I can be, and I'll do everything I can be to be at many training sessions as I can be and be there for as many games as I can be. So so that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm focusing on my career more right now, but I'm always going to have football in my life no matter what. But Motherwell are like they're being reasonable with me, like they're allowing that to happen. I think with the travelling with Hearts and things like that as well, it was literally going to be impossible. And I know that I wouldn't, if I can't make training and things like that, there's no way I'm going to be in the team. So I've spoke to Motherwell and things like that, and there's things put in place. So if I can't be at training, like I'll still make sure that I'm doing what I need to do away from football, so that I'm not kind of falling behind. And Motherwell are happy with that. So hopefully things will work out that I will eventually get to sign for Motherwell. But right now I'm just training with them, and I've been enjoying it. So that's kind of where I'm at just now.
So hopefully that all gets sorted out for you, and I'm sure anybody that's listened to the last hour or so with you will certainly wish you all the best, okay, on and off the park, and I wish you well for your career in the game, out the game, and certainly personally as well.
Thanks very much.
Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast and getting to know you. As Mhairi will tell you, we have our own wee group chat that we're very proud of, and we're all very close, and we use it to share our feelings and make sure that we keep all our spirits up. And it's been a little godsend during lockdown. And this goes back to what we were saying at the start of the show. And obviously, we dedicate this podcast to your brother Billy and anyone else that's been touched by suicide. It's really important that people talk. We certainly do. The three of us, as Mhairi will pitch in, I'm sure, and tell us as well, that we all keep our spirits up. And again, it's just a huge thank you for coming on and spending your time with us. It's so much appreciated.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, and obviously like dedicating this to my wee brother Billy as well.
So a really inspirational story from Lisa Swanson. Lisa obviously is probably the most famous Rangers women's player. There's been 11 years at the club, and 11 years unpaid is some testament. And for those of you listening, put yourself in Lisa's shoes and how that ended. That must have been really difficult, and it's really brave of her to come on and be so honest and share her story. And I've got nothing but admiration for her. Chris, a different kind of podcast in terms of people that we've had on. You know, we've had Lana on, who's obviously got amazing stories from out in Italy. We've had some massive names from Rangers, managers, treble winners, all sorts of people. But Lisa Swanson's story is equally as fascinating, as brilliant to hear as anybody we've had on.
I'd say that's right up there with the best podcast that we've done over the last 18 months or so, Steve. A really interesting chat, a really inspiring chat, and quite an emotional chat at times as well. I think a lot of people will have heard of Lisa's name. They might know a wee bit about her career. I doubt MD, or I doubt many people out there will know just her life story, the impact that football has had on her, the trials, the tribulations, the tragedy that she's going through in her career. It's really great for her to come on and to speak so openly, so honestly about everything that she's going through, and I'm sure everybody that listened to that over the last wee while will be pleased to hear that she's on a new path, both on and off the park, and certainly wish her all the best for it.
Yeah, she's a really great girl, and somebody that I've got really close to, and also really close friends with her co-host Mhairi. Mhairi, we spoke a wee bit at the start about obviously the FIFA fan movement and you being involved as Scotland's representative. What's coming up on that for you, and what can we expect to see, and where can we find you in social media and things like that, so that we can come and check this out and keep track?
Well, FIFA at the moment, we're quite quiet at the moment, just simply because of the lack of football. But hopefully, in the next couple of months, we'll be starting to really ramp up our preparations for, the Olympics. We'll be promoting things. We'll be given tasks to do and a lot of things to share online. And then it really is the build up to the Qatar World Cup. And just following not long after that is the Women's World Cup as well. So we've got a really, really busy kind of countdown now. So this is where it gets really exciting for us. We get to share all, our promotional things going on. We get to talk about international football at a really good level. For Scotland, it's quite difficult for me to chat about that amongst, some of my peers who certainly have a lot more experience at seeing their team at a top tournament. But it's just that knowledge sharing is fantastic, and I'm really appreciating what fans do all over the world and what they face, going in and out to games. You don't understand how difficult it is for certain girls, especially to be accepted in football. We think we've got a bit of a problem here, being taken seriously, but you've just no idea what some of the girls, they're not even allowed to go into stadiums, but they get to share their stories with us. So there's certainly a lot going on. There's a lot of interest worldwide in the women's game particularly, and certainly people like Lisa are a perfect example of the girls that give up plenty of their time, or their free time essentially to dedicate to football. And there's so many people out there that are doing the same. So we've got tons of fans like that are sharing their stories, and you can find out loads about the fan movement. Like you said earlier, hashtags We Love Football. You'll find things across Twitter, Instagram's the same as well. So there's a lot going on, and if you follow the World Cup accounts and the FIFA accounts, a lot of the time our group get featured. I'm actually about to do a spotlight feature for FIFA, so I'm just awaiting a final date for that at the moment, but they're going to have a chat with me and my experiences in football. So certainly when that comes out, I will be sharing that across my social media accounts. You'll find me mostly on Instagram, and my account is mmckgers, and that is my football based one, and I am on Twitter as well at mmck90, and I'm happy to have a chat with everyone around football, and certainly happy to share experiences and tell everyone about the fan movement as well. So it works two ways though, so I'm certainly going into fan movement and sharing plenty about Rangers, and it's actually really quite nice to see a lot of fans across the world taking interest in how we're doing as well. So it's a really exciting time for me.
That's brilliant, and it is great to have you with us, obviously with your involvement in FIFA, and we'll be back. We hope again to make this a monthly feature, and we'll be back with another women in football podcast next month. We don't know who it's going to be yet. That's Mhairi's job, so hopefully she can find us somebody that we all want to speak to. So we'll look forward to that. For myself and Chris on the 4LadsHadADream podcast, the men's edition, this month in September is Bob Malcolm. And Bob's story is absolutely brilliant. I think, Chris, when we spoke to Bob, and I think we forget just how successful Bob is. I mean, Bob was a treble winner. He's got some amazing stories under Alex McLeish, Helicopter Sunday, the stories of Paul Le Guen, and that'll be out in a couple of weeks. And again, people will think, Bob Malcolm, and it's not like the foreign national name, but I had a brilliant time talking to Bob. He was an excellent guest.
He's the whole chat with him was just really interesting, and there's plenty in there. The stories about how it all ended under Paul Le Guen. Also the sour note of it on a personal point of view for him. But some of the great days that he had under Alex McLeish, and certainly a guy who's a huge part of a really successful side and a really successful dressing room. Some of the stories that he tells in it about nights out and some of the carry-ons that the guys got up to, and it shows you how good these guys actually were, how good a team that was, that they could have the kind of the off-field japes, if you like, and go out drinking and do daft things, but then still turn up on a Saturday and not just win games, but go and win leagues and win cups and win trebles. And that says a lot about how good these guys actually are. So hopefully Rangers fans really enjoy listening to Bob's story. I certainly enjoyed catching up with him when we did it a wee while ago. So I think it'll go down well, and just adds into the list of great names, a list of great content that we've put out over the last couple of months.
Yeah, agreed. We're really enjoying what we do. We're enjoying having Mhairi with us and talking to the women footballers as well. It's been great. And before we end the podcast, it's a usual thanks to both Mhairi and Chris for joining us. We'll be back next month. It's a huge thank you as well to Stuart Franklin over at Gersnet. Stuart is the man behind all this. He edits and he makes us sound good. And by the way, there is a lot of edits on this that you'll not hear, thankfully, because I make mistakes left, right and centre. So it's a huge thank you to Stuart for that. It's also a huge thank you to our podcast sponsors, who are KGM Printing. And you can find them on Twitter at KGM, at KGM Printing. And you can also find them at www.kgmprinting.co.uk. They produce soft toys, 3D badges and other materials. And they're also licensed for a load of clubs, which includes the likes of Derby, Hibs, and a few other sides that they're trying to expand. They are well worth checking out for wee gifts and things, and they do all sorts of things on request as well. So please give them a follow and check them out. They're a huge supporter of football and Rangers youth development company that we help support, and we have raised £13,000 for them, and we couldn't have done it without the likes of KGM Printing. It's also a huge thank you as well to our other sponsors, Custom Kitchen Factory. The boys over there, Ali, etc., are absolutely brilliant. Please go and check them out. The Canine Way, who are dog sponsors, and they are brilliant as well. John over there does a great job. And also Slicks Barbers, who one of the best barbers in town. They cut all the Rangers players' hair, and they're absolutely brilliant. Obviously, I've never experienced that myself, but I can say by everybody's reviews that they are the place to go. So please go and check them out. And until next time, from myself, I thank you again for joining us. I hope you enjoy the content that I continue to put out on blogs and on podcasts. And we'll be back, as I said, later in the month with Bob Malcolm's podcast. Next month, it's Peter Hoostra. We had a great time recording that as well. And we're really excited about some of the names we have coming up as well. So thank you for joining us. Thank you very much to Lisa Swanson. Please, everybody, stay safe. And as we said today on the podcast, please talk, please reach out, and don't be silent. Until next time, ignore the nonsense, the irrelevant, and the noise.